This is Nobody Cares. I got my chauffeur's license in 1990, I think it was. I wanted to drive cab, and I did drive. For 2 years, I drove just in the wintertime and at night. And then in 93, I bought a franchise and a car, and drove full-time. Each car is a small business, and you run it that way. A lot of people, there's two shifts, two 12-hour shifts, and a lot of people run it like that. And so the day driver, the shifts are 4 till 4. The car changes hands at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The reason for that is because so that each driver gets rush hour. So the night driver would get the evening rush hour, and the day driver, of course, has the morning rush hour. But I decided not to do that. I decided to keep both rush hours for myself and not to have a night driver. The amount of money that you get from a night driver for his 12-hour shift really isn't that much. And you can make up a lot of that just by working the evening rush hour or just driving a couple extra hours. And then you don't have some stranger really pounding the piss out of your car all night long, you know. Repairs and, shocks, tires, all of that expense adds up. And brakes too. A lot of guys are really hard on the brakes. And there's really no reason for it, if you just drive sensibly. And this worked out pretty well for me. This way, I didn't have any other vehicle, and so I would have the cab in the evenings for, if I wanted to do something else. It's a funny business in a lot of ways. It's a job that never starts and never stops. You can go out literally any time of the day or night, and make money. And so it can be addictive that way. So you have to learn how to measure yourself. But it did work out well for me. I enjoyed driving. I enjoyed driving cab, and I got right into it. And so I thought I'd tell a few stories. Now, every cab driver's got stories, and so I'm not going to give you some BS, crazy stuff. But there was a few interesting things happened to me. And so, and it would have to be something interesting to remember because, you literally do hundreds or thousands. I have no idea how many trips I did. And to remember anything about them really is ridiculous. So one day, it was right after lunch, I pick up this lady on the west side, I think it was in Caswell, and take her down to the Midtown Plaza. She pays me, gets out, and no big deal, and away I go. And now I'm all over town for the next couple hours, normal, and I end up back downtown, and I get sent to the Midtown Plaza, and here's the same lady that I'd taken down earlier. And, the odds of this are astronomical, right? But anyway, she recognizes me, and so I take her home, and we have a bit of a laugh about this. The reason I told that little story first is because it happened to me twice. And the second time, the trip came out of City Park, and it was 2 guys and a gal, and I'll say they were early to mid-30s, something like that. Took them over to, and it's surprising, how good my memory is, really. And I suppose it's actually because of what happened later. But I took them to a house on J North, just 2 or 3 houses, no more than half a block south of 33rd Street. And same thing, no big deal. They pay me, they get out, and, away I go. And again, I'm all over town, and now a lot of time goes by. That was late afternoon, and it's now, I'm not really sure. Doesn't matter, doesn't affect the story at all. So it's 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, something like that. And I had a trip that took me downtown and dropped them off and cleared in the downtown area. There's 4 zones in downtown Saskatoon. And took a quick look around. It's all computer dispatch, and you can look to see how many cars are in all the zones. And I didn't like what I saw. There was too many cars downtown. I didn't feel like staying there. And so I took a look at Caswell again. And there was only a couple of cars there. And it's a pretty good zone, actually. Surprisingly good, considering that it's almost entirely residential. There are some businesses. It goes from 22nd Street up to 33rd Street, Idlewild, over to, I'm forgetting now, W, maybe, something like that. I just forget. And so I do that. I book Caswell, and I'm close enough I can do that. You're not supposed to book them until you're actually in the zone, but, everybody cheats a little bit. And within that zone, the zone also includes the Sands Hotel, which is Idlewild and 29th. Now, it was the Sands Hotel then, and I know it's changed names quite a few times since then. But United Cabs had a stand at the Sands Hotel, and so I look at that, and there's nobody in the stand. So I decide that's what I'm going to do. So I'll be, third in the zone, and I'd be first in the stand. If any trip comes out of the Sands Hotel, I would get that ahead of the normal queue for that zone. And so I turn out of downtown, go up Idlewild, get to 29th Street, and make the right-hand turn, go in. The entrance to the Sands Hotel is a semicircle, so you go up and around, and there's room, at the top for, guests to park and unload their luggage and go in and register. And the cab stand is just past the front doors. And so I pull in there and go up, and when I do that, these two guys come running out and wave at me, and so I stop at the top and they jump in the back. And I recognize them immediately. They're the two guys that I'd taken to J North earlier. The girl, she's not there, just the two guys. And one of them says, downtown. Okay, that's good enough for me. That's all I need to know at that point. So away we go. I turn my meter on, and when I get down to the street, it's like only half a block back to Idlewild. And the light is amber, and I don't get there in time, and it turns red. So I pull up and stop. Now, this is the longest light in Western Canada. At least it certainly seems like it when you're sitting there. So we're sitting there with my blinker on. It takes, eventually it does turn green, and so I pull out and turn left, which is going south on Idlewild towards downtown. Now, there's another light at 25th Street, and I hit that light. And when I stop, not much time goes by, just a few seconds, 4 or 5 seconds, maybe even not even that much, and my back doors fly open, and I turn around and look, and there's cops on both sides, and they grab these guys, and they got them out and throw them down on the ground, and their noses on the pavement, and they're putting the cuffs on them. And I hear this tap, tap, tap on my window, and so now I roll my window down, and the sergeant or who's ever in charge of this crew of cops is standing there, and he says to me, he said, you're going to lose this fare. And I say, yeah, I can see that. I said, so what's going on? What did these guys do? He said, one of them stabbed the bouncer at the Silver Dollar Saloon. The Silver Dollar Saloon is the pub at the Sands Hotel, but it's around the back of the hotel. It's more like an alley. It's actually a bit awkward to get in and out of for fares. And the hotel staff does not like to have any traffic coming through the lobby from the saloon. They don't need a bunch of drunks, with their mixing with the regular guests or whatever. So it's a bit odd, and it's difficult, I know, to go through the hotel from the saloon to get to the front doors. So it's a bit of a mystery. I don't know how those guys did it, but anyway, that's the story. If you drive cab long enough, you're going to get a runner. And this happened to me twice. I think it was only twice. And at night is when it's going to happen. I suppose it has happened during the day, but I don't recall any stories about that. And there isn't a damn thing you can do about it. It's almost always, both times with me anyway, it was a single male. And they give you an address that is close to where they want to go. And when you get there, they just open up the back door and get out and start running. And like I said, there isn't a damn thing you can do about it. Like, you can't get out and chase him. You can't leave your car. And you know from experience that there's no point in phoning the police. You could, and I guess they will come. But it could take them, who knows, half an hour. And you're sitting there not making any money. And it's not going to result in anything positive anyway. You know, how are they going to find the guy? So it's just you have to accept it as just part of the business. It's just a loss. I guess it's the same as somebody who owns a store, and shoplifters, and he absorbs that loss. Well, cab drivers, we absorb that loss. Fortunately, it doesn't happen very often. But it really pisses you off, I can tell you that. So this next story is close to 30 years ago now since I drove cab. And I think I've only told the story, we'll say 3 times. So I don't like to tell it. You'll see why, I guess. And actually, you're going to hear that phrase again about not liking to tell the story. I get sent to Grosvenor Square on 8th Street in Saskatoon and pull in there, and there's a lady waiting for me, and she jumps in, and she's, I don't know, in her late 50s, maybe 60, I don't know, something like that, dressed nicely, and she gives me an address over on the east side, a nice neighborhood, and she's going home, obviously. And there's a light right there that you can get in and out of Grosvenor Square with. It's a pretty small little shopping mall there. And so we do that, and I turn left onto 8th Street to take her home. And she says to me, could we stop at the A&W? I'd like to get a hamburger for my lunch. And I say, well, yeah, of course we can. And she knew that there was an A&W right on 8th Street, and I knew it as well. And it's going to be easy. Like, it's just a right-hand turn off of 8th, go through the drive-through, get to stuff, and back out, and then it's just another right-hand turn back onto 8th Street, right? Perfect. So we do that, and it's not very far down there. So I pull into the A&W, get into the line for the drive-through. There was no traffic, and I turn, we get up to the speaker, and I turn back and look at her, and she says, I want 2 teen burgers. And I guess maybe I did a little bit of a double take, or that she wants 2. And so, fine. So I order the 2 teen burgers and go up to the window, and she hands me a bill. I don't know what it was, 20, whatever it was, I don't know. And they give me the food. I give him the bill first. You've got to pay first, right? And he gives me the change and the food, and I hand her the bag and the change, and away we go. And she says to me, oh, I guess maybe this happened while we were waiting for the food to come out. She says to me, oh, they're not, she has seen my little hesitation or my little double take. And she says to me, oh, they're not both for me. She said, my dog likes hamburgers and I spoil them. And so we have a little laugh about this. And so I say to her, oh, what's your dog's favorite hamburger? And she says, Fuddruckers. And I go, oh, well, yeah, I guess so. Lucky dog. And they are, I don't know if that Fuddruckers is even still there or not now. And so then I say to her, well, what's his least favorite burger? And I get this silence from her, this quiet. And she says, well, she said, I don't like to tell this story, but one time we went to Beep Beeps, and she said, when I got home, I put his burger in his dish, and he just sniffed at it, and he walked away. He wouldn't eat it. And she said, well, I thought my burger was fine. She said, I looked at it, and she said, I smelled it. And she said, I ate my burger, but he would not eat his. Now, there is no way that this lady had dreamed this story up and was waiting to spring it on somebody. She was a very nice lady. And the conversation just flowed naturally, and the whole conversation was very natural. So this place, I'll call him Burger Royalty, has not seen any of my business in the last 30 years, that's for sure. We all know what a great nose dogs have. It's like, I don't know, 500 or 1,000 times better than ours, something like that. And how useful they are, or how useful they can make themselves by using their ability their smelling ability. So whether it was just maybe that one burger or something, like it's a bit of a mystery for sure, but I'm going with the dog on this one. In 96, I'd been driving for 4 years, and the car I had was beginning to show its wear. It was a 1985 Olds 88, and it was a great car. It never gave me any trouble at all. And so other than regular, normal wear, maintenance, brakes, shocks, things like that, nothing. But it was beginning to show its age. And I knew that in the very near future, I was going to have to replace the car, either do it on my own, or United Cabs would tell me that I had to. And the relationship that I was in at that time was starting to fray around the edges, and I could see, that the end was in sight for that. And I also knew that I had some other opportunities, and that if I bought a new car, that I was going to be driving cab in Saskatoon for probably another 4 years, and perhaps with that, it would have meant that I would have spent the rest of my life doing exactly that, driving cab in Saskatoon. And I did have another opportunity that I could see, and so I made the decision to quit. And I was just simply going to drive that car until it couldn't be driven anymore. They told me that I needed to replace the car. And so once I'd made that decision, it really freed me up, my mind and everything, and made my future clear for me. But I did want to keep driving for that summer. I figured I'd move to Calgary, which was my plan. I wouldn't do that until the fall. And so I also decided for the very first time to get a night driver. And I went through a couple different guys, and they're a funny bunch, people that drive cab at night. As you can imagine, that's a totally different world. A lot of those guys that own vehicles and drive just at night they're like vampires, right? And they're pasty white. They never see the sun. And so the part-time guys are just that. They're reliable for a week, 10 days, 2 weeks, maybe if you're lucky. Some guys, like when I did it, I stuck with the same car 2 years in a row driving in the winter. But there's a lot of real characters that drive cab at nighttime. And I talked to Tony down at United Cab about a night driver, and he said he knew that this gal, and I knew her too. After being there for 4 years, you know a lot of faces, and that she was looking for a car. And she was pretty reliable, although she had some issues too. And she was in her 30s, I guess. And she's quite good looking, actually, surprising, for that kind of work. And that a woman, I think she was the only gal, I'm sure, that was driving cab at night. And, she was slim, and she always wore tight jeans and had nice long auburn hair. And, she looked after herself. And would definitely get any man's attention, for sure. But when you got up close to her, you could see some toughness in her face, some lines around her eyes, that sort of thing. And well, I guess so. I'm driving cab, Jesus. So anyway, I get in touch with her, and yeah, she wants the job. So, and it worked out pretty good, actually. We got along great, and I don't think she was hard on the car at all. She was... her driving was acceptable. I think I knew that ahead of time as well. I was trying to be a little fussy with this. And I said to her, like the cars, like I already said earlier, shift changes at 4 o'clock. And so that's fine, give her the car at 4. And I told her right off the bat, I said, look, there's no way I'm getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning. That's just not my style. I said, I don't mind getting up early, but 4, that's just not me. I said, probably 6 is closer to the truth. And so, if you want to stay out and work a couple extra hours, that's fine. I don't have any problem with that at all. And but if you're quitting, you just park the car in front of my place, normal. That's what everybody does. And we just go like that. And so most days when I get up in the morning, the car would be there. A couple times she'd stayed out, and when that happens, it's no big deal. You just send a message to the car through United Cabs, and that you're ready to go, and she'll show up shortly after that. And so this one morning, I get up and look out, and the car's not there, so fine. I jump in the shower, have my shower, and then I phone United Cab, send a message, and then I get dressed, and then I'm all ready to go. And she shows up, so out I go. She gets out and goes around the passenger seat, and that's fine, and I'm driving, and the first thing I have to do is take her home. Now, there's a reciprocal thing that happens with cab drivers in Saskatoon, presumably everywhere. It's a courtesy, is what it is. And so not just necessarily with your night driver, but any other cab driver, whatever the circumstances might be, would get the same benefit. And basically, it's no more than $5 for the trip, regardless, as long as that's reasonable. You get some guy that lives 15 minutes away, well, it's going to be different, and he'll realize that too, and he'll make it up to you. Sometimes it goes like half of what the meter says. But anyway, it's not. It's all just fine. So I'm driving her home, and we get going along, and she says to me, "Do you know who Joe Montana is?" And I say, "Well, yeah, I do. Why?" She said, I had him in the car last night." I said, "Oh yeah, okay. Well, tell me the story. What happened?" Well, she said, "I was sitting at the Saskatoonian, and United Cab said there's a stand there at the Saskatoonian out by the airport. And she said this guy comes out, gets in the back, and says that he wants to go to a pub downtown. So away we go," she said, and he's chatting me up, and she said, I'm being polite, but basically I've gone him on ignore. And I can just imagine, really, like every man who got in that car would be chatting her up, right? You know how men are. And, but really, everybody, not just her, but you are polite and you do your best, because it's all about the tip at that point. When you've got a trip to do and you're going to make whatever's on the meter, all you got to do is finish the trip, right? So the game is all about tips. So all of us, like if you've got a cab driver that's not trying to get a tip and being as friendly and as try to be funny or whatever, in whatever way he can. So anyway, she said, I've got him on ignore, but I'm being polite. And she said, we're going along, and at some point he says to me, do you know who I am? And she said, I turned around and looked back at him, and I go, no. And he says, oh, I'm Joe Montana. She said, well, I turn around again and look back at him, and I say, so? She has no clue who Joe Montana is, eh? So she said, well, he was kind of quiet after that. And so I said, well, where'd you take him? She said, oh, I dropped him off at Dublin's downtown. I thought, oh, okay, well, that was a good choice. And it was a popular pub at that time. It was big, and they had lots of specials in there. And it was always busy. There were always people in there. And I'll just say right here that a trip like this is not unusual out of the Saskatoonian. It was June, and what's going on is these private luxury fishing camps, American-owned fishing camps way up in northern Saskatchewan. People come from all over North America. They're very expensive. They're first class. And the way it works is you can get to Saskatoon from anywhere in North America in one day. And then you overnight there, and it's almost always at the Saskatoonian. I've had these trips myself. And there's a plane that leaves every weekday morning. It's early, 6:30, maybe it's 7, but early. And you go to Larange, and from there you get on a Twin Otter, and they have you into your fishing camp by noon that same day. So I'm sure, without actually knowing, but I'm almost positive that's what was going on with Joe Montana. But as far as you go, Joe Montana, you fucking jerk, what the fuck's the matter with you? You got any modesty at all? Can you go one fucking day in your life without getting adoration from somebody? You got to tell people who you are. I can just imagine what it was like down there in Dublin. So you'd have a big crowd around you and regaling them with your stories about how fucking wonderful you are. Fuck you. I've got one more story to tell, but before I do that, I'll just mention the celebrities that I had in the cab. It won't take long because there was only two of them. Keith Morrison, if you remember, if you're old enough, was with CTV News for years and years, reading the news, and I guess he was too good or too good looking, or I don't know, but the Americans stole him, and I don't know what network he was on down there, one of their major networks, and he read the news for them for years, and then he became the host of 48 Hours, that true crime story that they have. And he's from Saskatoon, and he'd been home for Christmas. And the other one is Ben Johnson. Now, he's more infamous than famous, but same thing with him. He'd been in Saskatoon for Christmas. He has a sister that lives in Saskatoon, and I took him to the airport. The best trip that can be dispatched in Saskatoon is a MS trip, which is Medical Services trip to La Loche. And I got that trip. It's about 700 kilometers, a little over 700 kilometers. And it was a time call. And I just happened to be first in that zone that day. And I got the trip. And most time calls, when somebody reserves a cab for a certain time, are dispatched 5 minutes ahead. Because obviously they're important. They're booked for a reason. And so you get 5 minutes. Make sure that you're there on time and ready to go. But in this case, on a trip like this, you get half an hour. And there's good reason for that. I mean, you're going to need to fuel up. You got to make sure that you have money with you. Get some if you don't have it on you at the time. In my case, I should have said, this was when I was still leasing a car. So it was a winter night, and it was in March. We'll throw that in there right now. And late in the day, 5:30, 6 o'clock, something like that. But in my case, so I'm leasing the car. I had to get in touch with the owner to let him know that the car was not going to be available the next day for the day driver. And also my partner, I had to get a hold of her and make sure she knew what was going on, right? So I'm all ready to go, and I go over, and it's two gals, two native ladies, and that I'm taking to La Loche. And they've just gotten back from the States. One of them is seriously ill, cancer of some kind. They've been to the Mayo Clinic in the United States, and the other gal is just a companion, going along with her just to be a friend. And you know what? I never actually did figure out which was which. So anyway, we get going and north out of Saskatoon, and it's pretty much dusk when we leave, and we don't get too far out of Saskatoon, and I go to, it's getting dark, and so I go to turn my lights on bright, and it's just normal, like on the turn signal lever, right? You just click it towards you, and so I do that, and I click it, and I lose all my lights. Right, my headlights, I lose my headlights. I got no dash lights, and I'm like, holy shit. So I go click, 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 and I go back, and now I've got headlights again and my dash lights, and I'm going, oh man, what's this? So I'm thinking, well, okay, I'm going to try this again. Maybe I did something wrong, right? So I go click, and same thing. I lose my headlights, I lose my dash lights, and so I go click, and they go back on. And now I'm like, oh no. It's nighttime. I'm heading up north, and I'm going to have to do this trip with just my dims. I'm afraid to try it again because I don't want to lose my lights completely, because that would really be disaster. I've got 7 hours ahead of me driving up through the bush. Yeah, the road's paved, but I mean, there's deer, there's moose, you want bright lights, eh? But that's what happened. And so I just steel myself like, okay, this is how it is. You're going to have to do this. And so on we go. Now, the other thing at that time with the cabs, and mine was the same way once I bought a car and started driving on my own, and the one that I was leasing, everybody was on propane, which means you have no gas gauge. There was never any problem. You never had to worry about gas. You're just driving around town all day. You could go 12 hours easily, but you're just puttering around. You're not really, I don't know how much you're actually using. I'm not sure that I ever, in the 6 years, actually did figure out what what distance I could actually travel or how many hours or how it worked. But like I say, almost everybody was on propane. It was great. It was a little bit cheaper, and it burned really clean. I don't know why we're not still using propane. Well, one of the reasons, I guess, is because there's no gas gauge, and the tank is rather big. Like your regular gas tank won't work. Anyway, I'm not going to stall off there, but so I'm pretty nervous about this. It's Sunday night. Now, where in the hell am I going to get gas? So we go all the way. I make it up to Meadow Lake and find there's a service station there that's got propane. So I pull in there, and the girls get out. Now, they had a bunch of junk with them when we left Saskatoon, pop and chips and crap like that. And they're sitting in the back to pay absolutely no attention to me whatsoever, nothing. They're back there talking Chippewan, and which is fine. I'm just saying. So I pull into this gas station. The guy comes out, and I fill up with propane. The girls go in, use the bathroom, and I would too. And before we left. And so I say to this guy, I tell him my problem, what's going on here, what my destination is, and my problem with the propane and fuel. And he says, you know what? He said, I know the guy in Buffalo Narrows who's got the propane service there. He said, let's phone him. And so we do that. We go in, and he phones this guy in Buffalo Narrows, talks to him, tells him what's going on. And the guy, and he said, okay, all right, yeah, and I'm listening to half of the conversation when he's going, yeah, oh, okay, yeah, all right, we'll do that. I'll tell him, okay, yeah, bye. And so he says to me, look, he said, he tells me where it's right on the highway when you're going through Buffalo Narrows, and you'll see it, the propane place. And this guy lives right across the street. And now he knows approximately what time you're going to be there. And he says he's going to leave the drapes open in his living room and keep an eye open for you. And when you pull in there, he's going to come over across the street and gas you up. I said, well, thank you very much. I mean, people can be so nice, right? And doing that for me. So this takes a big load off my mind. So anyway, these gals, they come out with armloads of more potato chips and crap and pop. And so I probably grabbed something to eat as well myself in their sub or whatever. I don't actually really remember it. Anyway, away we go. And everything's fine except my freaking dim lights. And it's quite a drive from Meadow Lake to Buffalo Narrows. I'm not going to guess right now. I should have looked at a map maybe before I started this story. But anyway, you look at a map. I'm not going to. And so get to Buffalo Narrows. I know this much. It's an hour, about 100 kilometers short of La Loche, all right, because it's another hour after that. So Meadow Lake, anyway, I get up there. I find the place, no problems, right on the highway. I pull in by the propane pump, the tank, and I can see his house, and I can see him. He's standing up. He's in his living room, and out he comes. And he comes over and fills me up. I pay him for the gas, thank him very much. And then I say to him, I don't know, do you think I can go to La Loche and then all the way back to Meadow Lake? Well, he doesn't know either. I don't know, he doesn't know. And so he says to me, look, he said, I know what we'll do. He said, you know how to pump the propane, how to fill the tank? And I said, yeah. I said, I do it all the time. I do it every day. He said, look, he said, I'll tell you what. He said, give me $20, he said, and I won't lock the tank tonight. He said, it's just there's a padlock on there that he uses to. And he said, I won't close the padlock, he said. And when you get back, on your way back and you get into town here, he said, you just pull in there, you fill up, and then when you finish, he said, close the padlock, lock it up for me. I said, yeah, I'll do that, no problem, sure. Thank you very much. Again, people can be so nice, right? So that's what we do. Away we go again. And these girls, like I remember stopping one time, the native ladies, it's not like lack of modesty. They're just very open, right? I remember, and then, but the only time they talked to me was when they needed to pee, and it was like, driver, they called me driver. We need to pee. Oh, okay. So we pull over and stop, and they just go out and squat out there and do their business, and away we go again. And so we get all the way to La Loche, and I think, okay, finally now we're done, right? But we're not. We have to go to the reserve. Now we're on a gravel road. And it's another 15 minutes, and it has turned cold. I've gotten out, like I know at Buffalo Narrows, I mean seriously cold. It's minus 30, it's got to be. It's freezing. So anyway, we're on this gravel road, another 15 minutes. I'm guessing here was at least that. I'm driving really carefully on this road. I do not want to have a problem. It's the middle of night, Sunday night. We haven't seen a vehicle for hours. We finally get to the reserve, get to their place. They get out, cleaned up pretty good, took a lot of their bags and garbage and junk with them. He still had some stuff left over. Barely paid any attention to me. Like it was like maybe you could take a second and just say, thank you very much, good job, something like that. But no, anyway, just like, thanks, goodbye, see you. All right, I wasn't very important. I was just the vehicle. So fine, good, I'm done. Now I get turned around and I'm going back on this gravel road, and I mean I'm being really careful. I want to get back to that pavement. I don't want no flat tires I don't want any issue here. I'm really careful. Finally get back to La Loche, point the car south, step on the gas, away we go. An hour, I'm back in Buffalo Narrows, pull in, fill up with gas, propane, fill up with my propane, lock the padlock around properly like the way he wanted it, back on the highway, and away we go. And I'm moving pretty good. There's not a soul anywhere, I haven't seen a car for hours and hours. And it's really a nice night. It's really quite bright, and the stars are unbelievable. I'd stopped to take another leak, and I'll never forget it. Of all the times I've spent out harvest and other times working on the rigs all night and looking up at the sky, it's the one night that I will always remember, just the brilliance of the stars. And anyway, so I get thinking about my lights, and I'm thinking, well, I'm going to try them again here. And so I do. I get down, grab that little lever, click, and my lights go on bright, just like that. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, I could have had bright lights this whole time, and I can't believe this, right? So, oh man, and I'm flying along now, and it's getting towards early morning. And finally, I see this vehicle coming towards me. And as he gets closer, I go to dim my lights, right? And they won't dim. They won't do anything. They click, click, nothing. They don't go black. They don't go out. They don't go dim. They won't do anything. They're stuck on bright. And now, as this car gets closer and closer to me, he starts flashing his lights at me, right? And I'm like holding my hands up in the air and shrugging my shoulders, but of course he's upset, rightfully so. Gives me a little beep on the horn, probably. I'm maybe making that up. I don't know. But anyway, and that's the way it stayed for the rest of that night. And as it got closer to morning, there was more and more traffic, and it was the same thing every time. And you just feel terrible, right? There was nothing I could do. I'm sure United Cabs didn't get any great publicity out of this. They would have noticed that it was a taxi, right? But there's nothing you can do about it, right? Finally, it got light enough out that it didn't matter any longer. I just turned the lights off and stopped in Meadow Lake and fueled up again just in case, and made it back to Saskatoon, pulled into the garage right at United Cabs. United had their own garage there for the cabs. They did most of the work on all of the cabs, and they were really good there. Told them what the problem was, and I took a cab home and crashed out and had a pretty good sleep, and actually got up and I drove my shift that night, that Monday night. So, but anyway, the reason I'm telling this story, I know it went on, and it's not that great a story, but I thought I'd tell it anyway, because after that, and I'm still a fairly young man, and I don't drive at night now, but back then I certainly still did. And anytime that I meet somebody with their lights on bright, I don't freak out. I just stay relaxed. I don't flash my lights at them. Maybe I do once, something like that. I don't get carried away. I don't get mad, because you just never know. Maybe he can't dim his lights.